Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Scotland at 7 with me, Gordon Ross. It is the 28th of September. Joining me in the studio this evening, first of all, Effie Samara, writer and researcher and academic. Welcome back to the programme, Effie.
Hi, Gordon.
Hi there. And of course, joining us, a regular contributor, Chris McCusker from the SNP Socialist Group. Welcome back, Chris.
Good evening, Gordon.
Okay, so I'm going to press on as usual with the COVID virus update. And as of 2 p.m. today, a total of 750,529 people in Scotland have now been tested through NHS Scotland labs and the UK government's regional testing centres. Of these, 724,011 were confirmed negative. 26,518 were positive. There are 558 new confirmed cases of COVID-19. There are 0 reported deaths today of people who have tested positive. This will be an underestimate of the number of cases. Not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and not all those with symptoms will be tested. Of the people who have tested positive, 89 were in hospital last night, 11 of whom were in intensive care. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus COVID-19 infection now stands at 2,510. This number only includes those who have died in hospital having received a positive test for the virus. The latest UK daily figures available show that 41,902 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 40 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings and not just hospitals. Now, if you'd like to join the conversation here tonight, you can do so on Twitter by following us at Broadcast Scot and using the hashtag Scotland at 7. Now, our first story this evening, unfortunately, my auto cue is not working properly this evening, so I'll read this as best I can from here. So, the first story this evening is, of course, the Internal Market Bill. The Scottish Government cannot recommend that consent be given to the UK Government's Internal Market Bill. A legislative consent memorandum, an LCM, lodged by the Scottish Parliament by the Constitutional Relations Secretary Michael Russell, says that the bill undermines devolution and breaches international law. To recommend consent would therefore be incompatible with Scottish ministers' responsibilities under the Ministerial Code. The LCM warns that the bill undermines both the devolution settlement and agreed ways of working across the UK following EU exit. It also risks more uncertainty and confusion for business and consumers. It encourages harmful deregulation without democratic accountability and proper parliamentary scrutiny. It also explicitly gives UK ministers wide new powers in currently devolved areas of economic support and allows for breaches of international law. So, Effie, I tell you what, let's come to you first for your response to this story. So the Internal Markets Bill still causing problems, and the Scottish Government is recommending it should be rejected. Would you agree?
I've said this from day one, Gordon. This bill, the way it is presented, it causes a huge amount of headache to both the devolved administrations, but also to the Northern Irish, to the whole Good Friday Agreement. The Irish settlement, the entire foundation of the Good Friday Agreement is undermined, as is the protocol, according to which Boris Johnson signed off on this in December. So he's basically seeking now, as we know, to go back on those promises, and you're getting what would naturally be coming from Brussels, which is quite strong responses, but also from the rest of the world, because this isn't simply about, the devolved administrations, which is, in this case, obviously our concern. This is also to do with a country seeking to violate international law and to violate the Treaty of Vienna and all the other treaties that the country is signatory to. More obviously, as regards the devolved administrations, it is a power grab. We've discussed this many times, and I'll just direct people back to the fantastic interview that Michael Russell gave to Kenny McBride a couple of weeks ago, where he took apart the entire foundation of this bill and explained why this literally goes from funding, from education, through to phytosanitary protections, environment, water, defense, all the things that we fight to keep under Scottish rule and protections, they are proposing to breach. So I'm not at all surprised. They had warned that this would be the case. I understand Northern Ireland is going the same way. Stormont are not going to be recommending the bill. So there will be, it's a space to, we'll see. There will be turbulence.
Turbulence is an interesting way of putting it, Effie. How much notice do you think the British government will take of it? I mean, assuming that the SNP's memorandum is accepted by Holyrood and they do vote to withhold consent, how much notice do you think the British government will take of that? Will they be obliged to take that on board, or can they just simply ignore it?
They have said repeatedly, ministers have come out and said, including Alistair Jack, they have said that the Holyrood's position will be obviously they have tried to be civil in conversation, but the bottom line is whatever comes out of Holyrood will be disregarded. So they will go ahead. They have said openly in Parliament, in Westminster, that the majority that they enjoy right now means that they don't have to negotiate. As you know, a lot of the backbenchers, Tory backbenchers as well, we have had mini rebellions from them too. Also in the House of Lords, rebellion has happened and more is anticipated. So, you do have some Tories who have a little bit of a conscience left. I'm not quite sure how I can put these two words together in the same sentence, but that is the case. There are people who understand, if you like, if anything, the implications of violating an international treaty that you have just literally, the ink is not dry on that treaty. So, Boris Johnson coming out and saying, we are now implementing a new agreement, which is going to go against everything that we've signed. It's a huge, big issue, and it will undermine the UK's position in regards to other agreements that the UK will be seeking to sign with other partners in the future. So are they going to take notice, the President and administration? Of course they aren't. This is their game, and they'll stretch it as far as they can. But as I said, with rumours coming out of Westminster at the moment in regards to even the position of Boris Johnson come January, and other things, we are on turbulent ground, and we don't know. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow you have another U-turn, because negotiations with the EU are ongoing, and I believe that's also an item for tonight.
Yeah, it will be.
A new round has just opened. Again, Gove has been out explaining, the inexplicable, and you will see developments, but I'm not holding my breath.
Okay, if you listen, thank you very much for that. Chris, if I could turn to you for your comment tonight on this. Michael Russell's a well-respected politician, and obviously he's coming up for retirement, which I think is a bit of a shame. But can any of this really benefit Scotland in any way? I mean, it seems to me that this is all one-way traffic. Scotland gets trampled underfoot every time.
Well, again, it's not just Scotland that's getting trampled underfoot. It's the will of the people of Northern Ireland who overwhelmingly embraced the EU referendum and voted to remain in the EU. And it's just down to the narrow narrative of the British establishment, who obviously cannot survive. You have to wonder why England is so scared to be independent itself, and wants to be independent as four nations, because quite clearly there's obviously something that they're not telling us, is the fact that you know, in order for them to be successful, they need the other three constituent parts of the UK to be successful. And what they probably worked out is that if they bullishly go on with their, as I say, narrow-minded agenda and drag the other three along, kicking and screaming, then at the end of the day, it's England that gets its way, and Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland are just left to be, picking up the scraps.
I heard Chris Michael Gove characterising his role in this as, not so much his role, but characterising the Internal Markets Bill as a way of protecting the Good Friday Agreement. How on earth is that possible?
Well, there is no way that he's going to be protecting the Good Friday Agreement. You know, everybody to a man that sits in the Westminster halls of debacle, shall we call it, the DUP are blindly and loyally following alongside because they can see that there'll be another big cash cow going in the way of the DUP, you know, to hang with all the rest of the ordinary constituents of Northern Ireland. So they're only in it for the big bucks. But if it is true and the border does actually happen down the water, and not on land, it's going to be even more catastrophic than what it actually is at this moment in time. As far as I'm aware, there's no infrastructure being put in place at Cairnryan.
No, that's true.
Look back 20, 30 years, there used to be ferries going from the port of Troon. That's pretty much mothballed now. It's just fishing boats that go out of there. They just quite clearly have not thought this out. I mean, you know, getting off the Northern Ireland question for just a second, we have to pay, and not an awful lot of independent supporters will, you know, like this, but we do have to pay a bit of sympathy towards the people of Kent, who never voted for an internal border in their county. Basically dissecting Kent and London. Now you're hearing stories of the fact that the latest report from the EU basically reaffirms the fact that fresh food prices are going to ramp up between 20 and 30%, according to an article in The Guardian earlier on this morning. And that is a guarantee minimum.
Yeah. Okay, so some big problems coming, Chris.
Well, there are huge problems, Gordon, and the one thing that the SNP will want to avoid, and I can say this quite categorically, they will want to avoid getting into the scenario of "we told you so," because we did tell you so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, thank you, Chris. I'd like to move on to a story relating to this now. The European Union and the United Kingdom are far apart as the key week of the Brexit talks begins. The European Union and the United Kingdom both said that a post-Brexit deal was still some way off and that differences persisted on Monday over putting in place their earlier divorce deal as they began a decisive week of talks in Brussels. The EU national leaders will assess the state of play at the summit next month, with a no-deal Brexit still very possible, if not probable. Negotiations have stumbled over fisheries, fair competition and settling disputes. And Brexit descended into fresh chaos this month when the UK government proposed draft laws that would undermine the EU withdrawal agreement. The UK's positions are far apart from what the EU can accept, a deputy head of the EU's Executive Commission, Maroš Šefčovič, said on Monday, after talks with Michael Gove, the minister handling the divorce deal. We maintain that the bill, if adopted in its current form, would constitute an extremely serious violation of the withdrawal agreement and of international law, he said, urging speedy progress before he meets Gove again in mid-October. Mr. Gove said that clauses of the internal market bill that undercut the withdrawal treaty would remain. So, Effie, it appears that no matter what happens here, Michael Gove is sticking to the script that they're not going to withdraw the internal markets bill, and they're pushing it right up to the wire. Is this a bluff, Effie, or does the British government intend to carry this out, do you think?
Well, I've been following several commentators on this, because obviously I'm not in Brussels just now, and it would be a great thing if one could be a fly on the wall there to see what's going on. But I think we can all sort of half imagine, the frustration of an agreement having literally just been signed. A few months ago, just before lockdown, and then this government presenting itself now and claiming that this agreement is no longer valid and they need to reinforce it with other regulations, and that somehow this would undermine the union of the four nations. It's a horrible thing to say, and it just sounds terribly, we told them so. You can't have Brexit and devolution. You can't have Brexit and the Good Friday Agreement. You cannot have both. But obviously, the sort of money and the sort of narcissism and psychodrama that is riding on Brexit by far exceeds any logical consideration. Yes, I think they will try their very best. Is Gove bluffing? I mean, Gove is, I'm not going to say a clown, because clowns are skilled, performers. He is what he is. He is known for misrepresenting the truth. He is known for making up facts. He's known for, getting into bed with Donald Trump. I'm really, really sorry if people are just eating just now, but, I'm saying this in a sort of, he is known for all these acts and obviously for his affiliations with dark money, and the Vote Leave campaign and all the rest of it. Now, yes, there will be conversations and negotiations going on that we will never get to hear about. I think personally, and that's purely my instinct, they will try for a thin, inconsequential, bad deal, because that is all they can get, given the terms that they are trying to impose. They'll get something so that lorries, as Chris just mentioned very eloquently, this Kent border is not erected to the point of, people not being able to get to their back gardens. Yeah. Now, they'll try for something, but also let's not forget the COVID situations. I've just heard from university source that they are going to have difficulty getting basic medical provisions after January, obviously, if we have no deal. So, and you are then right in the middle of winter and possibly right in the middle of a second COVID wave. So, deal, perhaps. Again, I'm going to use the word turbulence for a third time tonight.
Okay, well, listen, thank you, Effie. Chris, I read an article this morning. I think it was outlining the worries of civil servants in Northern Ireland about this internal border down the Irish Sea, and they were saying that the average truck coming from mainland UK into Northern Ireland would have to have at least 400 separate checks, depending on what it was carrying. And you were saying to me just earlier on there that there is no infrastructure in place. It surely seems that no matter what happens with Brexit, that there is going to be chaos on our streets, chaos in our ports.
There's going to be chaos, full stop. Because the UK government have even admitted to the fact that the infrastructure that's needed, i.e., just for argument's sake, ANPR cameras, they're not in place to start with. And that involves many hours of digging trenches in order to lay the fibre optic cables that will carry the pictures back to the central command, so that people can actually sort of document these various stories. There was talk about convoluted diversions just on Kent alone convoluted diversions all the way down through the northwest of Wales, down into Gwent and stuff like that, and then coming out Pembrokeshire, just in order to get away from Kent, because the level of documentation, as you rightly point out, is something in the region of 400 different manifests, 400 different pieces of paper. And as I say, getting back to the Scotland issue, my recollection of Cairnryan when I was last down there about maybe 10 years ago, I used to go over to Donegal quite regularly, and there was basically nothing there apart from the ferry and a wee office. And sort of like left your car running, ramped up, paid your ticket, and then just drove on, kind of thing.
Right.
There was no
checks.
There was no checks. There was
no need
security.
for them then.
No, but not even that. The actual infrastructure on the actual road. I remember it. That is a 2-track road.
Yeah.
This way and that way.
Trucks queuing there would be disastrous.
We're not talking about laybys. We're not talking about traffic lights, one-way systems, or Jack Diddley. So as usual, Scotland are going to be treated with the mushroom syndrome.
Okay.
You know what that is? Basically kept in the dark and fed a load of shite.
Okay, well, forgive the foul language, Chris, but I get the idea. Anyway, listen, I would like to move on, if I may, and another story, of course, linked again to Brexit, and that is that the United Kingdom is a part of an arc of instability around the European Union, according to the EU Council President. Brexit Britain is part of an arc of instability that has emerged around the European Union, the EU Council President said today, ranking London's decision to leave the EU, along with threats from Turkey, Russia, Libya and Syria. An arc of instability has developed all around us, the European Council President Charles Michel said in an online address to the Bruegel think tank. In the West, Brexit. The result shook up the European Union. This choice of national sovereignty was felt as a failure of European construction, Michel said. The truth is, the UK faces a dilemma. What model of society do they want? And I think that's an excellent question to start with, Effie. What model of society does the British government want, do you think?
Britain, Gordon, is going just now through a major identity crisis. Mm-hmm. And that is the basis of this whole Brexit. I'm struggling to find a word. It's not really a comedy. It's not a tragedy, really, but it's somewhere in between. So in regards to Britain, obviously there is a very specific British question that has brought about this ideological struggle that's brought us to this. More widely across Europe, you have many parallels with obviously, the remnants of the far right, fascism, and the ideology of solipsism, and the ideology of individualism, and the rise of capitalism, and the huge, big inequalities that this has brought. But in regards to Britain, you have a country which literally over the last perhaps 50 years has undergone major issues. The loss of empire, institutionally, it's been happening for about 100 years, but in reality, empire imploded very, very suddenly after the Second World War. The loss of Africa, the loss of India, the loss of Canada, Australia, New Zealand. So you had a small country right in the middle of the Atlantic, which for a very long time reigned over probably about, 2/3 of the known world. And then all of a sudden, post World War II, you have the same institutional structures trying to deal with the loss of probably about 80% of that. Now, that is the difference. And Chris mentioned something very, very interesting just 10 minutes ago. He said, why are the English finding it so difficult to be independent, to just be English and be cool about that? Now, I believe, in my humble opinion, that is the problem, because England has had Englishness is a very, very difficult thing to understand for people, even if you think about this transgenerationally. So if you take people in the 80s right through to people, teenagers, it's an incredibly difficult thing to take in. What does it mean being English? What does it mean being British? Do you need to be British in order to justify your Englishness? These are very, very difficult questions. And also, I've just come out of a fantastic meeting with the School of Education. I've just been summoned to take on a new role within the University of Glasgow, and we were talking about colonialism and decolonizing discourse and decolonizing the curriculum. In England, these conversations are yet to be had. And what Brexit's going to do is it will bring them to the fore. They should have been had right through that 40-year period since we've become members of the European Union. But they've just been kicking it into the long grass. And that's what's made England vulnerable to the Brexit discourse. It's a fascinating subject, but the sadness is, up here in Scotland, we're right in the middle of it. The good thing about Scottishness is that it's actually a lot cleaner. You know what it is to be Scottish, and it's a much more internationalist, European inflected approach. And that's clean and that's easy for Scots and new Scots to understand. A lot harder for English women and men.
Okay, Effie, that's a wonderful answer. Thank you. Chris, Effie's hit on this issue of national identity as being one of the critical reasons for Brexit, why many people in England voted for it. I noted that, or I've heard in the discourse, many people saying things like, we won the war, and Europe should be grateful to us. This kind of attitude. Why has it not died? Why is this attitude still prevail in England, do you think, Chris?
I'm actually going to make myself an absolute pain in the backside here and say to Effie,
surely not.
That if she's doing any work on colonialism, if she wants to drop me an email, I'll be really, really, interested to add a couple of tuppence within. Myself and Effie, I believe, have both spent time in Surrey. I was 15 years south of the border. So I've spent a fair time down in the leafy suburbs, and some of them not so leafy. Walton-on-Thames is very leafy, and Putney is there's hardly a tree to be seen. But the interesting thing, what Effie is alluding to, is this sense of empire. This, never say die spirit, which has all been ramped up with the rhetoric that the Tory party have used, purposely. They have used that to get that overriding charge of civic nationalism, which you see in any street party and stuff like that. In England, the whole place is just festooned with Union Jacks. God bless the Queen, and Winston Churchill was a wonderful man, which we all know that he wasn't.
Well, Chris, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off so we can move on to our next story. And this time we're crossing the Atlantic. The New York Times has published the details of Donald Trump's tax returns. Mr. Trump, a self-proclaimed billionaire, paid only $750 in federal income taxes in the year he was elected US president, according to a stunning New York Times investigation that could shake up the presidential election. Trump taxes show chronic losses in the years of tax avoidance, was the banner headline on the paper's website on Sunday. The president's tax returns have long been the holy grail of American political reporting. The president paid $750 in federal income taxes the year he won the presidency, the paper reported, adding that in his first year in the White House, he paid another $750. He had paid no income taxes at all in the 10 of the previous 15 years, largely because he reported losing much more money than he made. In all, the paper said, Trump paid no federal income taxes in 11 of 18 years, which its reporters have examined. Many of his businesses, including his golf courses, report significant financial losses, which have helped him to lower his taxes. The Times also said that the documents it had obtained comprise information that Mr. Trump has disclosed to the IRS, not the findings of an independent financial examination. They report that Mr. Trump owns hundreds of millions of dollars in valuable assets, but they do not reveal his true wealth, nor do they reveal any previously unreported connections to Russia. The paper said that it would not publish the documents in order to protect its source. Effie, this is a bombshell, surely, when it comes to Donald Trump's chances of being re-elected, to discover that this man, who's a self-proclaimed billionaire, paid just $750 in taxes. I mean, that's just incredible, is it not?
No, it isn't, because everyone knows that Trump had declared corporate bankruptcy, I believe, 3 or 4 times. So we already knew that he was financially very, very challenged. Now, we know factually that since I believe the beginning of the 90s, he began to make bridges with the Russians. As the Berlin Wall came down, many Russians literally stormed out of Moscow and were looking for outlets and were looking for ways to get their money out. Not just Russians, but also Chinese, as China was changing course and things were happening in China with the handover of Hong Kong in the late 90s. Now, what happened is that at that time, Trump rescued himself personally by beginning to literally import money, providing bridges to import money into the United States from Moscow in different ways. It may be called money laundering. He has not been convicted of that, but there are rumors that this is exactly what he was doing. And by providing these bridges, he was able to allegedly, obviously, as I said, he has not been convicted. So what's happened is he has been able to ensure a lavish lifestyle and obviously appearances on television. And his personality lends itself to reality TV. This American way of extravagance and luxury that the Americans, this obscene opulence that people like to watch on television. So that is what led to what we have witnessed: the private planes and the golden and the towers and all this stuff.
Yeah.
We knew that Trump was financially challenged. Now, the issue, I was thinking about this, Gordon, is this going to mean that, you're going to have a groundswell, people coming out and literally voting for Biden or not voting for Trump? There is an issue there. There will be people, there may be few people, but there will be people who will think of this as, smart businessmen. I mean, can anyone be so stupid? I think, people can, but let us hope that people who did vote for him, the wide middle class US base who did vote for him, will understand that, if you've just parted with $10,000, $20,000 in tax, in federal taxes or income tax or whatever this may be, and this man for years on end is paying, just a few $100s, this will hopefully be able to enlighten them. I don't have much faith in the American electorate, and obviously there are institutional ways of suppressing the vote in America. So it remains to be seen, but I do think he's, I think they're going to go. I think they're going to go for Biden.
Okay, well, thank you, Effie. Chris, what's your opinion of this? How much damage will this revelation do to Mr. Trump, do you think?
Well, it will undoubtedly set him back, but I have often called Trump the Teflon president. But the fact that you can have a sitting president who owes hundreds of millions of dollars that he's personally guaranteed to lenders, and nobody knows who the bloody lenders are. As Effie was alluding to, there's suggestions that Putin's involved. There's also suggestions of China being involved, and you have to ask what obviously, apart from money, what has Putin got to actually gain out of this? And it reminds me of, and this isn't I'm not getting at anyone, but it reminds me of the dealings of the ex-chairman of Rangers, David Murray, where it was again alluded to the fact that he used to take money out of the steel manufacturing and put it into another company in order to float that company on the stock market, make it look good, and then move the money back on, which is not illegal. It's just a clever way of, moving money around.
Money,
Yes. Manipulation, great word. And so, whereas there is nothing as yet to come out about Joe Biden. There may be, who knows? But it's enough to get Nancy Pelosi sitting on her soapbox. So no wonder the whole world's having a look at this story.
All right. Well, listen, thank you, Chris. We're going to leave that story for now and moving now to Germany. And Germany's far-right AfD party has fired an official over a migrant comment. In Germany today, the hard-right Alternative for Germany, or AfD party, fired an official who had been caught on hidden camera discussing gassing refugees. In footage recorded secretly by ProSieben television in February, Christian Lewith, then the party spokesman, was filmed in a Berlin cafe talking to someone he believed to be a sympathiser about the challenges the AfD faced. Asked if the AfD wanted to see more immigrants, he replied, yes, because then things go better for the AfD. We can still shoot them all afterwards, he said, or gas them, whichever you like. I don't care either way. Die Zeit newspaper said that it was shown the footage, which it was said was filmed by Lisa Licentia, a right-wing YouTube personality who decided to leave the far-right scene. Die Zeit said nothing indicated that Lewith was joking. The German media reported today that Lewith was dismissed as an employee of the party's parliamentary group. The group's spokesperson was not immediately available for comment. Neither Lewith nor Licentia could immediately be reached. Lewith was already suspended from his position as party spokesman in April over an email which he wrote that the word fascist was overused. The AfD entered Germany's parliament in an election in 2017 and is now the largest party opposing Angela Merkel's government, a far-left grand coalition. The far-right party has been monitored by the security services and other parties consider it beyond the pale. Party officials strongly deny that it has links to neo-Nazi groups. Effie, this is a remarkable story. Another major, what would you say, a major embarrassing gaffe by somebody who's talking openly about shooting or gassing migrants. I mean, even by the far right standards, this is surely beneath contempt. This.
It's not. I'm not shocked, Gordon. Obviously, I think I probably am exposed to a little bit more than the average person through, academic discourse, which sometimes, when we research stuff, we are on the receiving end of stuff that, I'd rather not get into on live television. But the iconography and the rhetoric of the Holocaust and of genocide has not been historically really far from us even given the passage of time. So starting with, again, going back to the British Empire, a lot of the control that was imposed on colonized people was done through means of internment, camps, executions, punishment, corporeal punishment. Now, obviously, the Nazi time was a monster in human history, a very recent one. People are still alive. My dad was 3 when all this was happening. So this is something that has been preserved. The fascist monster has been preserved, and it does rear its head when it's nicely fertilized by far-right groups, by digital means, by Facebook, by the media, by the normalization of people like the AFD that you've just referenced, or even, people like Farage. You remember the posters prior Brexit? These were borrowed from the Nazis. Now, none of this is unknown to us. It's all in our consciousness, and it's sitting there. And all you need to do is incite it. And this is what these people are doing. The good thing about Germany is that they do have Angela Merkel, who is fervently opposed to this stuff. And this is the same up here in Scotland. We're very lucky to have a government who is fervently opposed to this stuff. But when you have a government who are open to it, it's easy to bring it to the fore.
Okay, Effie, thank you for that. Chris, your reaction to this today, I must admit this was the first time I had heard this piece of news today. How on earth can somebody justify making a comment like that? Did you think that maybe nobody was listening?
No, quite not. Obviously not. He has obviously got a past history of being a Nazi sympathiser, and the AFD are absolutely horrendous in some of their actions. There were rumours that they were the ones that were attacking kebab shops and stuff like that when the migrants first originally started moving to Germany. But I'm really I'm not. Yes, I'm bloody well upset at the fact that shooting and gassing migrants, and to sort of like put that in a question. How is this even possible? How could people possibly think about even saying this, let alone doing it?
Yeah.
Well, I would hate to point out to the viewers that this is actually being carried out by a right-wing government in Israel who are shooting Palestinians on a regular basis. And you just don't get round to gas.
Chris, let's keep on point, Chris. We're talking about Europe this evening. Obviously, we'll deal with Palestine another time. But anyway, let's move on.
Gordon, it's exactly the same. These people are actually doing it, whereas this guy's just talking about it.
Okay, that's anti-Semitism, Chris. It's a different subject, but we can talk about that maybe another time. I'd like to move on to our next story, which is an SNP story, just for a change. And the SNP has raised concerns over a Home Office plan to outsource asylum interviews. SNP MP Chris Stevens has raised concerns over a Home Office pilot scheme to outsource asylum case interviews to a private contractor. Interviews with those seeking asylum, which have just restarted after the COVID lockdown, are currently carried out by civil servants. But it's been reported that the Home Office are exploring other options to reduce the backlog of cases. The Public and Commercial Services Union, the PCS, has said it's received a letter outlining how a private contractor could be used. The trade union said that the move would be deeply concerning. The Glasgow South West MP has said the plan is outsourcing gone wild. Effie, is this just another instance of the British government, the Tory government, privatising something else? I mean, it just seems that they never finished privatising or giving contracts to companies that they favour.
It's been, ultra neoliberalism, obviously. So let's say ultra capitalism is known for doing this, and they will take it as far as it will go, Gordon. They will privatize everything. We've been shouting and screaming from the rooftops that are going to privatize the NHS. They have already privatized the NHS by a good 35% in England.
Yeah.
So all of these services, they will privatize education. They will privatize the Home Office. They will privatize just about everything. Outsourcing is part of this idea that the state needs to get out of our lives. And they play on that narrative, which is incredibly dangerous, because the state is there to ensure our safety. The state is there to ensure justice, to ensure access to health and education. Now, people who are persecuted abroad and people who have suffered torture and crimes against them, committed against them, rape and what have you, and they turn up on your borders and they seek asylum, they seek refuge. Now, to put these people in front of private companies who will have, let's be honest about this. These companies will have targets. These companies will have been told how many people they want in and out. So none of this is going to be honest. None of this is going to be real. It is all going to be about money, targets, and obviously the system of oversight is going to be very, very minimal. And that's another issue that happens with privatization. Oversight by the state becomes a huge problem. Although it may be in the contract, these people have already compromised themselves in, familiarizing themselves with politicians. So that is going to be it. The system is going to be pretty much, people, I would say, it's probably it's probably safer to just stay where you are. England's going through a really dark time at the moment.
Okay, certainly is, Effie. Thank you for that. Chris, very briefly, if you would, your reaction to this, privatising the asylum interviews, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I can be as brief as you can be on this issue. The two words that should have anybody quaking in their boots, and that is Serco and Mears.
Yeah.
Because anybody that just looks at their track record would know that they are completely incompetent, and they are only getting these contracts from their Tory donors. Westminster. But I would quickly just like to point out the press release from PCS, which is the Public and Commercial Services Union. Their General Secretary, Mark Serwotka, has basically said that people are seeking refuge in this country. And should be treated with respect and dignity, and outsourcing the service to a company that is solely interested in private profit is at odds with those values. Our members don't need to be, we don't need private contractors coming in and taking over services. What they need is a well-resourced, well-staffed and a humane department dedicated to helping those desperately in need.
Thank you, Chris. You summed it up very nicely. Okay, on to another story now in Scotland, and this time student accommodation guidance on visits visits home is to be clarified. Additional guidance has been published for those living in student households after new measures were announced this week to protect the population from the spread of coronavirus. The Minister for Further Education, Higher Education and Science, Richard Lochhead, has written to college and university principals and student accommodation provider networks to set out new guidance. It has been developed in consultation with the National Union of Students Scotland and Universities Scotland. The guidance is intended to address questions from students and encourages them to remain on campus if they're able to do so. It outlines what students can and cannot do and what they need to think about if they're considering a return home on a permanent basis. This includes where students are isolating and require support to allow them to comply with the requirement to self-isolate. Under this guidance, the household which students are returning to are asked also to self-isolate and states that public transport should not be used. Effie, so this seems a particularly tailored piece of, or a change to the advice to be given to students, presumably in response to the sudden spike in COVID cases. Do you think the students have been treated fairly in this respect, Effie, or are they, to some extent, kind of hostages to fortune, do you think?
It's a difficult one, Gordon. Obviously, as you know, I'm part of the University of Glasgow, and Glasgow have been very generous in offering rent rebates, and I know that there is pastoral support, but also food being supplied and other services, laptops and what have you. So, we have reached out in the best possible way. However, this virus, has been with us for a while, so it's very difficult for me to express a private opinion. I think the Four Nations approach in opening up and trying to get people back onto campuses, schools, offices, public transport, we knew this would have an impact. Now, I'm not going to say much more. I will simply say, if you are a parent or a student listening, please visit your student email, read carefully the guidance, also follow the Twitter accounts or go on the Scottish Government website. There will be very detailed guidance about what you must do. This virus is spreading again exponentially, and we need to ensure that it is contained. It's not a great situation. Personally, I'm delivering all my lectures online, as is the School of Education, College of Social Sciences. But obviously, we, as I said before, we are operating under a Four Nations approach, so we don't have complete agency over what we're doing. Go on your emails, stay safe. There will be time to party if you're healthy.
Okay, thank you, Effie. Chris, briefly, if you would, students, Nicola Sturgeon's hoping that they will be able to return home for Christmas. Do you think that's a realistic prospect?
I think it's, a more than realistic prospect. Again, we should point out the careless use of language by Richard Leonard and Douglas Ross, basically suggesting earlier on in the week that children would be locked up for Christmas. What a Dickensian Victorian attitude that is, which makes great for sensationalist headlines.
Yeah.
But it's absolute mince. Many people have asked me, "Oh, what's Nicola going to do about this, and what's Nicola going to do about that?" And and the only honest answer I can come out with, because I don't, contrary to popular belief, I don't talk to Nicola on a regular basis. But what she is trying to do is she's trying to do the best with the tools that she's got, whilst trying to keep the peace with the Four Nations approach.
Yeah.
But still trying to keep the peace with because if you remember, it was last month that the Tories and Labour were baiting the Scottish Government in order to get our children back into full-time education. They were gagging for it. You know what I mean? They were like, "Oh, in order for the economy to start, we need to get kids out, into school so that parents can go to work." Yeah. Well, now the kids are at education. Now the parents are at work, and hey ho, what are we having in here? Some of the kids are getting sick. Do you know what I mean? As Effie said, quite rightly, it was bound to happen no matter how you try and open up the economy.
Yeah, something was bound to happen.
It's like opening a tin of sardines. You've got to fully open the bloody tin in order to get the last tail out. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. I've never heard COVID-19 described as a tin of sardines before, Chris. That's an amazing analogy. Thank you for that. Okay. Well, listen, moving along, still talking about COVID, but this time after COVID, and talking about rebuilding a fairer Scotland after COVID-19. Ideas are being gathered to drive a fairer recovery in the wake of coronavirus COVID-19. Organisations and community groups are being asked to share ideas and evidence based on their experiences of responding to the pandemic and their engagement with people, with people's lived experience of poverty and inequality. The responses will help inform the work of the Scottish Government's Advisory Board on Social Renewal, which is tasked with building positive policy and practice shift seen during the COVID-19 virus to tackle disadvantage and poverty and to advance equality and social justice. Analysis of the responses will feed into the board's discussions, and a report on the outcomes will be published later this year. Effie, this is an interesting idea that the government has, or appears to have, commissioned a study into best practice during COVID-19, but also looking at people's experience of poverty and inequality during the pandemic, and trying to use this evidence-based approach to inform, constructing new social structures in a fairer Scotland. How effective do you think this kind of survey will be? Will it be useful in that enterprise?
The Scottish Government have very good form on civic participation.
Yeah.
So we have seen this, especially under the stewardship of Nicola Sturgeon. We have had the formation of citizens' assemblies. We have had other consultations on social justice, on rape, on women's rights and children's rights. So this is, to me, this is fantastic news. The only way you can build a democratic society is by opening up the voices of those, by enabling the voices of those who were the most silent previously. It is much more easily said than done, Gordon, believe me.
Yeah,
because these are the people, absolutely, these are the people who will tell you things that you actually do not want to hear. So inviting the debate and asking people in poverty or mothers of children who, as I have heard many times, in my research, who are unable to feed their children dinner, who are unable to access basic services, who suffer from addiction, and their children suffer, and all the rest of it. People of a certain age who are, again, unable to access disability services and other things. What you're going to hear, the testimony is going to be damning. It's going to be very, very bad. But until and unless you are prepared to hear it, you will not be able to address it. So it's great news. My fear is, and the fact is, that as long as you are, under a Tory government whose ideological positioning is one of ultra-capitalism, where the reality is that a 3% owes more, they owe more than the rest of the 97%. And what they owe and the capital that they have access to grows exponentially. For as long as you are under that rule, really, no matter how much testimony you gather and how much data you collate, you will not be able to do a huge amount about it. But I have no doubt that the intention is there, the good intention is there, and some things can be done, yes. So, let's get to it, let's do it. However, the big structural changes will not come under Tory rule.
Okay, Effie, you've made that nice and clear. Chris, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to be very brief on this, Chris, but gathering the evidence from poor people themselves, surely it's got to be a good idea for learning from the COVID virus and how it's affected them.
Well, briefly and succinctly, Gordon, the one thing that I would like to be on that questionnaire is what do these people think about UBI and how that would enhance their life, their quality of life, in order that they can access, food stuffs readily without having to rely on food banks, which again, as Effie pointed out, has come to the fore because of 10 years of Tory austerity. So UBI is the way to go. The only way that Scotland can get UBI is to be an independent nation.
Okay, Chris, well, thank you very much for that. A nice idea to leave everybody with this evening. Well, I can see from the clock on the wall that we're coming to the end of tonight's programme. So before I leave you, let me just remind you that if you want to help us and become a supporter of Broadcasting Scotland, you can do so by following the instructions at the bottom of your screen now. Go on the internet and look for broadcastingscotland.scot/register. and follow the prompts. And that's it from this evening's edition of Broadcasting Scotland. Scotland at 7, I beg your pardon. I'd just like to thank my guests, Effie Samara and Chris McCusker, for joining me this evening, and hope you'll join us again on the next edition of Scotland at 7. A very good night to you.